Welcome to the Carers WA Carer Representation Program training module, being part of a committee. In this module, we will look at the sorts of reasons that meetings are convened, the difference between committees, working parties and steering groups, the various roles within a committee, and what you can do to ensure that you're an effective committee member. So, why do we hold meetings? There can be a lot of frustration and cynicism about meetings, as these quotes demonstrate. US writer and humorist Dave Barry said, "If you had to identify in one word the reason why the human race has not achieved and never will achieve its full potential, that word would be meetings." And even Star Trek's Captain James T. Kirk said, "A meeting is an event where minutes are taken and hours wasted." But it doesn't have to be like that. It is absolutely possible to hold good meetings and to have effective committees. When convening a meeting of any sort, the first question should always be, do we need to have this meeting? Without a clear purpose, there's no reason to meet. For example, it could be to make a decision. Perhaps a vote will be taken to decide on a course of action. Could be for reporting and accountability. It may be part of a contractual arrangement to report on meetings held. Meetings are a great forum for problem solving and advocacy. A diversity of skills and experience within the group can all contribute to excellent outcomes. Regular meetings can be used to monitor the progress of specific projects being handled by various people, to see how things are going, if there are any problems or issues, and to plan the next steps. They are also good for conflict resolution and for discussion, information sharing and networking. Meeting face-to-face is also a more effective way of relationship building rather than contact just by phone or email. So what's the difference between, say, a committee as compared to a steering group or a focus group? Sometimes these terms overlap or they're used interchangeably, but this is an overview of how committees may differ based on purpose. A committee is a group of people appointed for a specific function by a larger group and typically consisting of members of that group. Committee members should be knowledgeable in the area of the committee's responsibility. That is why we match our carer representatives to committees where they have relevant lived experience as a carer rather than just an interest in a particular area. Ideally, members should be a diverse group. We recruit carers with a range of different perspectives and experiences rather than just putting one representative on multiple committees. Committees may be a standing committee, where they exist and function more or less on a permanent basis, for example, a finance committee or an executive committee. An organisation's board usually takes all their advice and recommendations from a standing committee. It could be an ad hoc committee. These committees are appointed or created for a particular purpose or on a short-term basis. The committee is dissolved when the job is complete. For example, a committee might be appointed to build a playground or plan a conference in the lead up to accreditation. A committee with a clear purpose, a well-informed leader and dedicated members has the best chance of being successful according to its purpose. A steering group or a steering committee is a group of people who are in charge of managing or directing something. They have a guidance and advisory role, and members may be multi-agency or from different departments within the same organisation. A good steering committee will ensure that the agencies or groups involved cooperate in completing a shared vision and goals, and ensure the means and mechanisms are in place to get things done, especially if the group is multi-agency or different departments. The steering committee must make sure that the project meets the needs of as many of the participants as possible. This means it must fairly weigh all requests and act impartially to do the most good with the resources it has available. A steering committee acts as the ultimate decision maker in handling political, legal, organisational, technical, cost, management, cultural and personnel issues. There has to be a forum for making final and sometimes difficult decisions. A working party is a committee or a group appointed to study and report on a particular question and make recommendations based on its findings. Working groups are made up of members and stakeholders who have particular interests or areas of expertise that relate to the focus of that group. For example, a community advisory committee has an advisory purpose, but they may set up a working party to review or update an information pack for carers. The WA Department of Health Consumer, Carer and Community Engagement Framework Working Group was established for a short term and had a very clear goal and purpose. There are 3 important documents which are associated with any committee meeting: the Terms of Reference, or the TOR, the Agenda, and the Minutes. A clear and understandable Terms of Reference, or TOR, is the first step to a successful committee. Each committee needs a Terms of Reference document. At a minimum, the TOR should include the purpose, what the group is trying to achieve, and the scope and the authority of the committee. It is important to have a clear purpose before going on to form the committee. Some examples of other information that might be included in the TOR are the official name of the committee or group, whether it is a standing committee, advisory, or an ad hoc committee, and a description of what the committee will do and why it was created. The TOR should clearly describe what is in and out of scope for this committee, what authority the committee has, such as decision-making, approval, recommendation, etc., the type and number of members, including how members are appointed, how the chair and co-chair are appointed, as well as a list of members, when, where, and at what times the meetings will occur, meeting procedures, how many members must be present to form a quorum, for example, details about agendas and minutes such as how and when they'll be distributed, and communication between meetings, etc. Any reporting requirements, who to, in what format, and how often. The resources and budget, and required outcomes of the committee. TORs are usually reviewed periodically, and information about last and next review dates should be stated on the document. A meeting agenda is the list of items that participants hope to discuss or accomplish at the meeting, and the reported follow-up from the previous meeting. A draft agenda should be sent to participants a couple of weeks before the meeting, seeking any additional items that members would like to add, including how much time should be allocated to the topic. The timing is important. When putting together the final agenda, items may need to be prioritised in order to ensure the meeting stays within its set time frame. Some items may need to be carried forward to a later meeting or discussed outside the meeting. The final agenda should be sent out about a week before the meeting to give attendees time to prepare, read any documentation, and carry out any actions. The agenda will include when, where, and what time the meeting is to be held, the points for discussion or action, time needed to cover each topic, any preparation which needs to be done. For example, attach any relevant documents to be read, previous actions, and who should have attended to them. Standard agenda items should include introductions and apologies, a review and acceptance of the minutes of the previous meeting, a review of participants' progress on commitments and action items made at the prior meeting, a regular review of purpose and agenda format, and it may include information items, action items, and/or forward planning. By definition, meeting minutes are the written or recorded documentation that is used to inform attendees and non-attendees about what was discussed and what happened during a meeting. The meeting minutes are generally taken during the meeting so that participants have a record of what happened. But with permission from the attendees, you may be able to record the meeting to transcribe later. Even then, it's wise to also take notes through the meeting, as technology can fail and sometimes it's hard to hear recordings. Minutes usually include the name of the attendees and any apologies, the agenda items covered, any decisions made, any follow-up actions which need to be taken, events or discussions worth documenting for future review. Ideally, meeting minutes are distributed as soon as possible after the meeting and reviewed at the next meeting for correctness. At the next committee meeting, participants will have the opportunity to approve the minutes as a true representation of the meeting, or if there are any significant errors or omissions, these will be recorded and the minutes can be updated. Accurate and timely minutes really contribute to the success of a committee. Within the attendee group at any meeting, there are additional responsibilities and roles that members may be required to or wish to take on, including a chairperson, co-chair, minute taker, or secretariat. Being an effective chairperson requires skill, but the necessary skills can be learnt. Some important things to remember if you take on the role of chairperson in a meeting. It's okay to make mistakes. You learn from them and you improve with practice. The primary duty of the chair is to guide the group's discussions. The chair should encourage every member to participate in the meetings, keep the discussion focused on the matter at hand, ensure that the meetings start and end as scheduled, and that the agenda is followed. Running a purposeful and inclusive meeting can be challenging. Some common issues include long discussions with no conclusion, decision-making based on inadequate information, poor attendance, uneven participation, and the unwillingness of participants to ask questions. These issues are not always easily addressed. Often the most important skill of the chair is the ability to maintain the order and flow of the meeting without offending or upsetting anyone, to act as a diplomat. It may sometimes be necessary for the chair to discreetly and sensitively give feedback to meeting attendees outside the meeting. For example, if they regularly fail to stick to the agenda or have side conversations. In some instances, it is appropriate to meet with people about to join the committee to discuss and make the expectations clear up front. Some possible strategies to manage meetings. Set the expectations up front. For example, have a timekeeper with 5-minute and 1-minute card for prompts. Establish the ground rules and have them at every meeting. Set the tone. Everyone is equal. Be prepared to interrupt. Let people know in advance that you may interrupt if they're running over time, so that they're not shocked or think you're being rude if you do. Deal with possible or unavoidable overtime. Is the meeting room available? Gain the consensus if possible, and have a break at the normal time so that people can leave if they need to. If overtime is out of the question, plan ahead as to which agenda items will be missed. Use a parking lot for issues that might need follow-up, might need to go on the next agenda, or to be dealt with outside of the meeting. This can be used to keep the meeting on track and diffuse any potential conflict. Be firm but tactful. Be prepared to redirect discussion back to the topic. When doing this, it is important to acknowledge that the information is valid, but the time restraints mean that you need to get back to the agenda. A good strategy to remember if conflict arises in a meeting is stop, drop, and roll. Stop. The discussion has become personal or non-productive and needs to stop. Drop. Instruct the parties to drop the discussion and regain their composure. And roll. Roll into a break even if you've just had one. Reset the expectations with the parties involved in the conflict and have them agree to abide by the rules. Above all, the chairperson is there to guide the meeting, to let the meeting attendees know what is expected, to be well prepared and know what's on the agenda and why. For example, for information, discussion or decision making. The chair should be well briefed about each item and about any actions taken since the last meeting. They should ensure all necessary background papers, including the last meeting's minutes, are sent out with the agenda beforehand. The chair should check with staff that all relevant practical arrangements have been made, for example the room layout and any visual aids that are needed, and arrive in good time before the meeting is due to start. At the beginning of a meeting, the chair will welcome any new members and make any necessary introductions. They'll receive apologies for any absences. A chair should set the scene, state the objectives of the meeting and introduce each item, and ensure that additions or amendments to minutes are recorded. Throughout the meeting, the chair should aim to facilitate more than to participate. They need to maintain control and set limits. A chair needs to keep to the agenda while also allowing flexibility and freedom of expression. If appropriate, ensure that a quorum is present. Ensure the time is used effectively and that proper minutes are taken. Encourage full participation, drawing out the quieter members and discouraging those monopolising the meeting. Be prepared to highlight issues that no one else will, and to be the one who has to ask the awkward questions. A chair should be impartial and ensure that everyone understands what is being discussed, and clarify acronyms and jargon. The chair should summarise at regular intervals and ensure that decisions are recorded, as well as who is going to be responsible for any actions. At the end of a meeting, the chair should summarise as needed, for example, specific decisions made or actions which need to be taken. They should let people know when the next meeting will be and ensure that the minutes are written up, checked by the chair and sent out in good time. At the discretion of the chairperson, it may sometimes be necessary to hold agenda items over to another meeting or to address them before the next meeting via email in order to keep the meeting on time. Rule number 1 as a chairperson: be prepared. Read as many articles, tips and tricks on chairing meetings as possible and get very familiar with the subject. The more you know about meetings, the better. Not all tips seem very useful, but someday they might come in handy. Rule number 2, don't be afraid to make mistakes. As Albert Einstein once said, anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. Don't be afraid to try out new things from time to time. The only way to get experience with something is to actually do it. Rule number 3 is evaluate. After each meeting, evaluate what went well and what didn't. And again, remember, chairing is a skill that can be learnt. As well as a chairperson, each meeting should have a minute taker. Taking minutes requires great listening skills and attention to detail. The minute taker should have excellent writing and communication skills. A minute taker must accurately record decisions, commitments, and major discussion points made at a meeting. Importantly, it's not necessary to record everything that is said, but a very brief summary of the discussion and resulting decisions and/or actions must be included in the minutes, as well as any deadlines which need to be met. The minute taker needs to maintain focus and not get drawn into the meeting. They should clarify any points they are unsure of and ask whether something should be minuted if it's not clear, by the chairperson if during the meeting. The chair may ask the note taker to recap the discussion periodically during the meeting. Other participants in the meeting are called attendees. As an attendee, you should ensure that you've read the previous minutes and the agenda for the meeting and come prepared with notes if you want to comment on any of the agenda items. The more participation by the attendees, the better the meeting will be. But remember to listen when others are speaking and that everyone has the right to speak and be heard. If you want to bring something up at the meeting, it should be added to the agenda under new business, ideally beforehand. You will be asked how much time you need and, in the interests of fairness and how valuable everyone's time is, you will be expected to stick to it. If you just have some information to share, it can be added under information sharing, but if you need extra time, you may be asked to add it to the agenda for the next meeting where it can be given adequate time. You also need to be aware of the need for confidentiality, and if you're unsure, ask before sharing any information outside the meeting. Attendees are not excluded from assuming a role or having a responsibility in the meeting setting. The attendees are the biggest success factor of any meeting. You may be asked to act as a timekeeper or to record items in the car park. The Carers WA Carer Representation Program team are here to help. We can support reps in a number of ways. We can accompany you to your first meeting or any subsequent meeting if necessary, with permission from the committee. We can develop training in response to your needs and requests. We can support you to present to a group about Carers WA and/or Carer Representation Program, and work with you to prepare for taking on a specific role, such as a chairperson. Some examples of good meeting practices are: don't interrupt. As a carer, you may need to take a call, but remember to turn off the volume and take the call outside the room. Keep to the time allocated, especially if you're speaking to an agenda item. Everyone's time is valuable, and it is important that meetings start and finish on time. Avoid conflict. Agree to disagree, but if you feel strongly, for example, about a decision that is made, you can ask to have your lack of agreement minuted. And most importantly, remember that you are there to represent the broader view of the carer community. So in summary, the key to good meetings and effective committees is a clear purpose, the right people, preparation, and participation. Thank you for participating in this training module, and please contact the Carer Representation Team on 1300 227 377 or carer.representation@carerswa.asn.au if you would like more information, support, or if you have suggestions for any future training modules.